Good afternoon. My name is Jeff. I'm one of the project team members that has been working on the Town of Cobourg's Integrated Community Sustainability Plan. This process has been ongoing since December 2021, so we're about the year mark. This is representative of the final phase of engagement for the ICSP. I suppose before we begin, I would like to also note that there are two other processes concurrent with the ICSP. First is the Green Development Standards for the Town of Cobourg, which looks at the energy efficiency and ecological resilience potential for new urban development in Cobourg, and then as well an exploration of the feasibility of green energy retrofits for low-income neighborhoods in Cobourg. So we're not going to talk about those items too much through the course of this presentation, just because they are their own thing and they're quite large. I'm already hoping to not take too much of your time. This is just ultimately an opportunity to walk you through the draft ICSP as it stands in November, but also to point you in the direction of different parts of the plan that you might want to read further, as it will be made available in full. This is for folks who may not want to read an 80-some page document, and I completely respect that. So, by way of an agenda, first we can talk about vision and goal areas, which for those of you who are watching this video who participated in previous engagement processes, some of that will feel a bit remedial, but worth noting all the same. Then I will discuss briefly the overarching target for the sustainability plan, then get into the actions which will form the bulk of the visible implementation of the ICSP, and then finally talk a little bit about the implementation of the plan. It's a bit different than how some plans are implemented, and it's just worth highlighting as to what that is and how it'll look over the next few years. And so when we talk about time in the context of the Cobourg ICSP, we have a longer term outlook going across 30 years, so that'll bring us past 2050. So the vision and the goals are reflective of that longer term perspective. The aim here is that they form the North Star for all actions being implemented through the ICSP. We have an implementation framework, which I'll speak to again at the end, and that looks at how the plan is implemented and how it is adjusted as needed based on new information, based on change in priorities. We wanted to introduce flexibility here, just given the increased need, particularly in the area of climate change and how often things are changing on the ground. We wanted to make sure that the ICSP could respond to that. And then finally, in the shorter term, the first 4 years, we will talk about the key actions that are going to be the most, again, visible representation of the ICSP. And so where the vision is concerned, we are taking a fairly holistic view of sustainability and how it colors life in Cobourg. So ultimately, sustainability infuses the daily life of Cobourg as a community, and then the operations of Cobourg as a municipality. Cobourg is a leader in sustainability through stewardship of a healthy environment for future generations, support for a strong local economy and responsible urban development, and respect for cultural diversity and social and economic equity for all residents. With that in mind, sustainability in Cobourg is a consistent practice of adaptation, progress, and collaboration. It is a shared responsibility for all residents. Supporting the vision are several goal areas. And so these are essentially a set of categories that are going to organize several distinct goals and indicators by their relevance to a dimension of sustainability. The goal areas reflect the conventional dimensions that we know of sustainability that were first introduced in the landmark 1987 UN report called Our Common Future. Those are in alphabetical order: culture, economy, environment, and society. Now, we have taken those goal areas and amended them slightly based on what we believe to be correct for Cobourg. And so natural environment and built environment are their own categories. Here, the idea is that the natural environment is a system that we are a part of, and while we can influence it, we cannot ultimately control it. What we can do, however, is very much maintain control over the built environment through a standard regulatory process that is planning and development. And so that part of sustainability focuses on how to make the built environment interventions more sustainable so that ultimately the natural environment is sustained. As well, we've maintained the standard dimension of the economy. We have merged together society and culture due to their shared overlap and interplay. And then there's a governance goal area. And governance, not typically considered in sustainability, but it is very important because just given how big of a system sustainability is and the number of different people who are going to be involved in implementation of the plan, governance is important from a decision-making perspective, from a coordination perspective, and from a collaboration perspective. So those are the dimensions of sustainability that are ultimately going to dictate all of the goals that are present in the plan. There are many goals present in the plan. They have emerged from a previous engagement process that was conducted in the spring. I'm not going to go through them all here just with respect to your time, but I would encourage you to read them. They are found in section 2.2 of the plan. Where the target is concerned, we are maintaining a singular focus on one target. And the reason for that is the first 4 years of the ICSP is largely going to be focused on building the data context to be able to set interim targets, both for big encompassing areas like greenhouse gas emissions, but for smaller, more discrete areas like active transportation or urban agriculture. So the aim here isn't to be terribly prescriptive right now, just understanding there is a paucity of data, but we wanted to follow both direction that is found in the Climate Action Plan from 2020, and then as well from the federal government in 2021. And so here, the sole target, the thing that the ICSP is ultimately concerned with is a reduction of community-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 80 to 100% by 2050, so representative of the lifespan ultimately of the ICSP. So the actions to support that target, there are 16 of them, and we are right now chiefly focused on the first round of implementation. So that'll be 2023 to 2026. And so we ultimately wanted to just focus on the first 4 years because they're the closest to us. They align with a council term. We didn't want to get too out in front of things, understanding how quickly things can change. So the aim is to ultimately build momentum towards sustainable outcomes that achieve impact across each of the listed dimensions of sustainability, though obviously with a preference to environmental sustainability. We also wanted to leverage existing or emerging initiatives within both the Town of Cobourg and the community of Cobourg to ensure that the plan can really support the good work that is already being done. It is very clear that there's a lot of great work going on in Cobourg with respect to sustainability, and we didn't want the ICSP to exist in parallel to that. And then ultimately as well to be realistic about available resourcing, that we wanted to prioritize the items that are deemed most impactful to ensure that the resourcing that the town and the community has is ultimately used to the greatest effect to make the biggest impact. And so action 1 in the plan is concerned with resourcing and staffing a sustainability coordinator position, both from public engagement feedback and then just the experience of going through the development of this plan. It is clear that sustainability planning and implementation, it can't occur off the corner of someone's desk. It has to be largely the sole purview of a position with the opportunity to rally other people around that position. So that is the intent with this action. Action 2 is to develop an urban agriculture strategy to support production of sustainable local food. There's also a waste diversion lens to this through composting. There's also some biodiversity concerns to this item that will be discussed in other parts of the plan. So this is an opportunity to not only introduce new means for community participation and engagement through things like community gardens, but to also make sustainability a very visible part of the landscape in Cobourg. Action 3 really continues on some of the great work that's being done by community actors in Cobourg to create a supportive framework for active transportation. So this is really bringing in line the transportation master plan and some engineering design guidelines for to support active transportation and ensure that there is a safe infrastructure and a burgeoning culture for that in Cobourg. Action 4 is to create a fleet electrification strategy. So again, this is really continuing to build on momentum that's already in place by both the Town of Cobourg and then several community actors as well. So in this photo, of course, we have Pinky, a electric police cruiser that was unveiled in 2022. And the intent here is to build a comprehensive strategy that allows the town to understand the life cycle of its current fleet, how to begin to replace internal combustion engine powered vehicles with electric vehicles in a way that both responds to the imperative for sustainability, but is also fiscally responsible, and to understand what implications this also has for the need for charging infrastructure within Cobourg to ensure that the fleet can be supported as it goes about being used in the day-to-day operations of the Town of Cobourg. Action 5 is somewhat related to the previous one, but is a bit more expansive. So developing a municipal greenhouse gas and waste reduction strategy. And this is focused on the Town of Cobourg as a municipality, its operations. The idea is the town cannot be asking for wholesale greenhouse gas reductions without also ensuring that its own house is in order, so to speak. So here the aim is to set those interim targets and to conduct an operational review to understand what improvements can be made and in what time duration and what resourcing is required to do that. This, again, builds on some of the great work that's been done, particularly in 2018 and 2020 with the greenhouse gas benchmarking and the climate action plan. Action 6 is looks at integrating natural assets into the municipal asset management process. So this is a fairly new approach that a lot of municipalities in Canada are taking, which really every municipality has an asset portfolio in terms of street lights and sidewalk pavers, and there's a sense of understanding what the life cycle of those items are and how often they need to be maintained and replaced and what value they ultimately bring to the community and to the municipality. And so missing often from this conversation, and again, not just in Cobourg, is the benefit that natural assets bring in ways big and small. Chiefly, of course, is through its ability to help regulate temperature or help build a more resilient natural environment. So to really ensure that these natural assets are also considered municipal infrastructure that needs to be maintained over time and what that ultimately entails. Action 7 is to develop a community energy plan. So the distinction here being that this, if the previous plan was focused on the municipality, this is more broadly looking at what the community of Cobourg can do. So the Government of Ontario offers matched funding for such an initiative to allow municipalities to build out a plan that allows for the setting of interim targets for greenhouse gas reduction to understand the economic development opportunities behind energy efficiency in a environmentally friendly sense, and to essentially build out the strategy that's needed to reduce community greenhouse gas emissions. So where the previous action we discussed around greenhouse gas emissions was focused on the municipality, this one is focused more so on the community. Action 8 is to pursue naturalization in Cobourg's parks and open spaces. So the intent here is to essentially increase habitat continuity, increase urban biodiversity conservation, reduce maintenance needs, increase environmental resiliency, and improve quality of life through issues of maintaining the urban forest in publicly held lands by the town of Cobourg. So again, a new way of viewing park spaces, but one that will be evaluated through a series of pilot projects. As well, an opportunity will be made through education and outreach to support individual community members who want to pursue naturalization on their own properties. Action 9 is to create funding pathways to retrofit Cobourg's public and private building stock. So here, building on the work that's being done with the Green Energy Retrofit study to further explore what funding is available to do this, and to then pursue that funding to support not just the town of Cobourg, but Cobourgians as people retrofit their own properties with everything from low flow toilets and energy efficient appliances to things like heat pumps to ensure that the residential sector in Cobourg has a reduced carbon footprint. Action 10 is focused on community engagement and rallying the community. So hosting an annual growth, development, and sustainability summit. This is going to function to allow everything from guest speakers to be brought in to talk about sustainability, for community members to talk about the initiatives that they are spearheading, to rally people to that cause, for sustainability advocates to be celebrated for their hard work, and for progress on the plan to be reviewed and maintained, so that the community has an opportunity each year to speak with the town and understand where the ICSP is at that moment and where it is going. Action 11 somewhat relates to the previous in creating a Sustainability Champions program. So here, this is a two-parter almost, where you recognize the level of interest and diligence that exists with respect to sustainability in Cobourg. And we wanted to create a program that both celebrates that, but also harnesses that energy so that people can opt in to working with the town as volunteer ambassadors and to go forward to their own networks to talk about ways to live more sustainably, whether that is reducing energy use, reducing water use, increasing waste diversion, and understanding that doing everything sustainably might not be for everyone, but to really relate to people and understand that everyone can contribute to sustainability in their own way. Action 12 is concerned with developing a regional working group to guide energy efficient urban development. So this relates to the green development standards and understanding that this is a fairly new thing within Cobourg, that it's going to require the collective effort of a number of different groups to be implemented well, implemented effectively. The intent is for the town to work with the development industry, environmental non-government organizations, educational institutions, and local labor unions to essentially dispel issues associated with the green development standards, work through emerging problems, ensure that the green development standards are being effectively followed, and to ensure that the level of knowledge amongst all these different groups is brought to the same place, so to reduce opportunity for miscommunication and to ultimately ensure that the ambition and the mandate of the green development standards is being realized. Action 13 is to create a land acquisition strategy to support land stewardship. Understanding that through the subdivision process, there is the opportunity for the town to take reserve lands to maintain for environmental purposes. That is something that goes on through the subdivision process, but is there a way to make that more standardized, to make it more systematized? And so the intent here is to build a strategy that allows the town to align that subdivision process, that reserve taking, with issues of biodiversity conservation, habitat management, and climate resiliency. So really taking a pretty standard process, but applying this really necessary climate change lens atop it. Action 14 is reflective of a lot of what we heard during engagement to support waste diversion across the town of Cobourg. And that both relates to the town as a municipal government, but also, of course, the community of Cobourg. We heard a lot that people do want to divert waste from landfill, but not necessarily having the tools or the system to do that. So this action really places the impetus on the town of Cobourg to work with Northumberland County as the waste manager, as it were, to support Cobourgians in making choices to divert waste. Action 15 looks to updating the town's procurement policy to promote sustainability. So the town works with a number of different vendors, consultants, contractors to acquire services and goods. And the intent here is to ensure that each of those consultants, vendors, subcontractors is acting sustainably in their own efforts to support the town in realizing a number of different service deliveries. So a bit of a technical action, but one that's very important in helping to ensure that the day-to-day operations of the town of Cobourg are sustainable. And then finally, formalizing an extreme climate event preparedness process. So this is very much reflective of the increased prominence of heat waves in summertime, but then also lessons learned from the flood events in Cobourg of 2017 and 2019, that through a lot of these other actions, we can build a more naturally resilient, built environment resilient Cobourg, but there's this issue of community resilience as well. So how to ensure that the community of Cobourg ultimately is resilient in the face of extreme weather events. And through adjustments to the emergency management planning process for the town, we can help make Cobourg as a community more prepared for the extreme weather events that have been occurring as a result of climate change. So a fair number of actions. I am assuming some of you watching this video will think that's not enough actions, and others are thinking that's far too many actions. And what I aim to provide you here is a sense of how these actions work in the broader scheme of the plan. And then I will conclude. So how we view implementation of this plan is really through a four-part process. The first is to act across 4 years to initiate actions. The second is to report, so to annually report on plan progress beginning in 2024 so that there's transparency and accountability as to how things are going. 3 is to evaluate activity to date, so to get a sense of how each action that is currently in process is being realized. And then 4 is to adjust, so understanding that the assessment might reveal that things aren't working as we might hope, and to then modify the approach to the action as needed. And so the ultimate intent is that there's continual learning and reflection and adjustment built in, so that if things are working really well, what lessons can we take from that? If things aren't working, how can we change and improve? And so this brings us to 2027, when the ICSP will be ultimately refreshed. And by that we mean the vision and the goals probably likely to stay very similar to what I've spoken to here, because they are the North Stars. But the actions, they should either have been progressed and progressed in introducing new actions. So this sense that there's a constant opportunity to adjust the ICSP for new challenges on the ground, new opportunities that might emerge through anything from shifts in how we view climate change as a society to new technologies that might be helpful in integrating into sustainability planning. So wanted to ensure that the ICSP can remain adaptive over time, and that's the spirit behind this implementation cycle. So that is it for now. I've already gone and taken a bit more time than I'd like, but so it goes with talking about a document this important for the town and community of Cobourg. I would like to thank both you sitting at your computer watching this video right now, getting ready to provide some feedback on the ICSP as it stands. And indeed, if you've been a part of this process prior, whether in the summer talking about the draft actions or at the very start talking about the current state of sustainability in Cobourg, it's all been very important to shaping how we as a team have thought about sustainability in Cobourg. So again, thank you for taking time out of your day to provide feedback into such an important process for the town. Where we aim to go next is, again, to bring this to council in 2023, whereupon a lot of these actions we can begin to realize. So do take care, and thanks very much for participating. Have a great day.